The General Assembly will hear a statement by His Excellency Ricky Nelson Houenipwela, Prime Minister of Solomon Islands. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands. I invite him to address the General Assembly.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, allow me on behalf of my government and the people of Solomon Islands to convey our warmest greetings to you, Madam President, and the members of this August Assembly. Our warmest congratulations to you, Madam President, on your election as President of the 73rd session of the General Assembly. I am confident that under your leadership, you will ably guide our deliberations during this current session. Madam President, I assure you of my delegation's full support and cooperation during your tenure in office. I also commend and thank you, your predecessor, His Excellency Miroslav Lajčák, for his sterling stewardship of the 72nd session of the General Assembly, and we thank him for his leadership. Solomon Islands also joins the other members in mourning the loss of the late Kofi Annan, former Secretary General of the United Nations, and a proud son of Ghana and Africa. We acknowledge his immense contribution to the work of our organization. The late Kofi Annan was truly a global statesman. Madam President, I welcome the theme chosen for this session. It reflects the ultimate goal that this august body strives to achieve, making the United Nations relevant to all people, global leadership and shared responsibilities for peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. This is indeed a powerful theme. It speaks of a united world with both equal responsibilities and equal opportunities. It also speaks of the need to be united in achieving peace and tranquility amongst all our nations and peoples. Indeed, Madam President, the implementation of the SDGs requires a unified global partnership and the concerted joint efforts of all stakeholders to mobilize all available resources to achieve these SDGs. It recognized that by being together, we can conquer the inequities of today that have befallen us, be it man-made or natural. It also reflects the preamble of the UN Charter, which speaks powerfully of our mission to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the equal rights of men and women, and of nations large and small. Our preamble clearly articulates the principle of universality for all peoples and all nations, regardless of their size. Madam President, the world has unfortunately entered an era in which the foundation and the strengths of multilateralism is being challenged and undermined by unilateral state-posturing maneuvers. We have seen a proliferation of insular-focused policies by some countries, causing them to renege on their commitments under various international frameworks and treaties. The United Nations allows us to consolidate our collective resolve and solidarity for maintenance of international peace and security, promote sustainable development, advance respect for human rights, and promote the rule of law. Madam President, Solomon Islands reaffirms its commitment to achieving the SDGs by 2030. To this end, we have incorporated the SDGs into our National Development Strategy 2016 to 2035. We also welcome the midterm review of the Small Islands Developing States SIDS Accelerated Modalities of Action Samoa Pathway. It is my hope that the outcomes of the review will provide the impetus needed to reinvigorate the special case for SIDS going forward. The review should also ensure that all partners and stakeholders, together with SIDS, address more effectively challenges faced by the SIDS and take full advantage of the opportunities through genuine and durable partnerships. Solomon Islands acknowledges that achieving the SDGs will be an arduous and challenging task. However, it is a path that we must trek. We welcome all the assistance and support from our development partners towards this cause. Madam President, this year Solomon Islands met 2 of the 3 criterions for LDC graduation for the second consecutive time. The Committee on Development Policy recommended that Solomon Islands graduation from the list of LDCs. The Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, has also recommended that this August body consider and endorse our graduation accordingly. While my government appreciates the report and its recommendations, I must point out that as a post-conflict state, Solomon Islands will require the development of appropriate, prudent macroeconomic and financial policies to maintain the threshold indicators upon which the recommendation for graduation is premised. It is therefore my fervent hope that this Assembly will grant Solomon Islands an opportunity to properly assess the potential impacts of LDC graduation on key sectors which sustains our economy. A predictable and workable strategy that would put us on a continued upward trajectory will need to be developed as well. I call on the United Nations system to support us in these assessments and the development of appropriate strategies that would assist us to boldly move forward with confidence. The Solomon Islands government respects the process of graduation that is based on an agreed rules-based system and will endeavor to graduate from the LDC status. However, any appropriate and relevant assessments undertaken of the country must be well conceived, thorough, and consultative. As you are aware, graduation from LDC status of SIDS such as Solomon Islands will not improve our vulnerabilities. To that end, we are pleased to know that a special task force has been established to ensure a smooth transition of SIDS from LDC. Madam President, while we in Solomon Islands are not subject to threats of an armed invasion, we are nevertheless continuously being invaded by a common enemy that we call climate change. Climate change is the greatest threat facing humankind. For us in the Pacific Islands, this threat is existential. The resulting climate change-related extreme weather events means that Solomon Islands, like other Pacific Island countries, and as we have just said, the Caribbean, is more susceptible to natural disasters of great severity. The threat of sea level rise, as well as inundation and salination of arable land, the destruction of biodiversity, including through a warming ocean and acidification, are ingredients for the causation of food security concerns and increase the risk of potential conflicts. In light of this threat, Solomon Islands calls for collective global leadership in climate change action and for strengthened commitment towards positive outcomes in COP24 in Katowice, Poland this year. Solomon Islands joins other Pacific Island states in strongly urging the largest emitters of greenhouse gases to take urgent actions in reducing this harmful emission. Reduce now or regret later. In the ongoing dialogue on the climate change, appropriate financial support to SIDS to address their loss and damage resulting from destructive effects of climate change must be seriously considered. Madam President, in our efforts to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and meet our intended nationally determined contributions, Solomon Islands remains committed to transitioning to the use of renewable energy. On behalf of my government and people of Solomon Islands, I extend our gratitude to our partners, including the World Bank, the Green Climate Fund, the Economic Development Cooperation Fund of Korea, Australian Development Assistance, and the Asian Development Bank for their financial assistance and support towards the Tina Hydro Dam project. This project, when completed, will cater for some 80% of the capital Honduras power consumption needs. I also acknowledge the bilateral assistance provided by the governments of Italy, Spain, Austria, and Luxembourg towards the Pacific small island developing states, including Solomon Islands, to support renewable energy projects. We look forward to continuing the partnerships in the coming years. Madam President, adequate and quality infrastructure is a prerequisite for positive economic and inclusive growth. Investment in infrastructure projects positively impacts on the majority of the population and enhances accessibility to goods and services, both private and public. In this connection, Solomon Islands is grateful to the government and the people of Japan in the transformative development of major infrastructures such as the Honiara City main roads, Honiara Seaport, and the proposed upgrade of the Honiara International Airport. The opening of the second international airport in Munda and the undersea fiber optic cable are also game-changing infrastructures for which the people and the government of Solomon Islands are grateful for this valuable assistance from Australia and New Zealand. Madam President, Solomon Islands has benefited through South-South cooperation on capacity development programs with partner countries such as Papua New Guinea, Fiji, and Cuba, including the potential to explore other innovative opportunities such as pharmaceutical solutions. The people of Solomon Islands are forever grateful to all our development partners for the genuine and durable partnerships. We will collaborate and increase efforts going forward. Madam President, as a large ocean state, the issue of conservation and proper management of ocean resources is an important priority for Solomon Islands. We will actively engage on matters concerning the management of oceans. With regards to ocean management on the high seas, my government welcomes the recent first intergovernmental conference to negotiate a legally binding instrument under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas concerning areas of biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. A successful outcome of fair and equitable framework will again prove the relevance of this organization and its convening powers. At the regional level, Solomon Islands subscribes to the Blue Pacific Initiative, which sets the context for the development of our regional priorities. We believe that maintaining the well-being of the oceans should be a key priority as acknowledged in the SDG 14. Restoration of fish stocks, implementation of science-based management measures, monitoring, control, and enforcement are but some of the measures which Solomon Islands is promoting through domestic and regional arrangements. At the national level, I am pleased to inform the Assembly that we are in the final stages of developing an ocean policy that will rationalize, enhance coordination, and support implementation of all ocean-related legislation and policies. The development of the national policy is a voluntary commitment that we announced at last year's Ocean Conference. Madam President, security concerns have become more complex. It now involves activities beyond traditional definitions. Some of these now include new threats such as climate change, cyber crimes, transnational organized crime, and so forth. Therefore, it is now more important than ever that we work more closely and collectively with the international community to address these security concerns and threats. This year, we witnessed constructive engagement towards better managing relations along the Korean Peninsula. The UN must continue to ensure that conflict prevention and resolution remains a central plank to its work as mandated by the UN Charter. Solomon Islands recognizes that the stability in the Middle East is critical to world peace. A peaceful Middle East will lead to a prosperous world. Solomon Islands continues to call for peaceful settlement and supports the two-state solution in the Israel-Palestinian conflict. In the Pacific, security concerns are driven by external factors, human security, and climate change challenges. In recognizing the importance of our changing security landscape, Pacific Islands Forum leaders undertook to build on the positive platform established by the Bikatawa Declaration. This culminated in our adoption earlier this month of the Boyd Declaration at the recent Pacific Island Forum Summit in Nauru. As we continue to work towards the goal of global peace, the need to actively engage in peacekeeping remains. Madam President, although small, Solomon Islands is contributing towards achieving global peace and security through participation in the UN's peacekeeping program. So far, Solomon Islands has contributed 12 officers towards the United Nations African Mission in South Sudan. Solomon Islands is committed to increasing our participation in UN peacekeeping missions. Cognizant of the important role of UN peacekeeping missions, we call on the UN's collective support towards ensuring that sustainability of UN programs is not being undermined by funding shortfalls. Having benefited from the regional assistance mission to Solomon Islands values the importance of peacekeeping missions. Madam President, to sustain peace, adequate resources are required. The international community also recognizes this. In this connection, Solomon Islands has benefited from the peace-building funds approved under the Peacebuilding Commission in November 2017. Through the resources provided under the Peacebuilding Fund, we have been able to facilitate dialogue involving a wide range of stakeholders on key issues including land reform, rural development, border issues, and youth and women's participation. Recognizing the complex and ever-changing global security landscape and realities, Solomon Islands reiterates the call for the reforms of the Security Council to be inclusive by expanding its focus to non-traditional security priorities. Seats must have a voice through a dedicated seat in the non-permanent seat category in the Council. Madam President, the biggest threat facing the Pacific Islands apart from climate change is the threat caused by non-communicable diseases. Approximately 70 to 80% of all deaths in the Pacific can be attributed to NCDs, with many of these deaths being premature. In the Pacific, including Solomon Islands, the high prevalence of NCDs translates to an economic burden on healthcare systems. 2/3 of beds at the National Referral Hospital in Honiara, our capital, is occupied by NCD patients. The burden that NCDs has on the productivity of the people of Solomon Islands and opportunities foregone to provide care for NCD patients is an eminent socio-economic concern for an economy with a small human resource base. The international community already acknowledged that the NCD's challenge to SIDS in the Samoa pathway. Now is the time for action. Madam President, while we speak of leaving no one behind, we still close our doors to Taiwan and continue to contradict our own principles by leaving Taiwan's 23 million people behind. Madam President, the implementation of the SDGs requires a unified global partnership. Taiwan is ready, willing, and able to engage in and contribute the wide range of substantive UN programs for the welfare of humanity. Solomon Islands continues to call for the participation of Taiwan in the United Nations specialized bodies including UNFCCC, World Health Organization, and the International Civil Aviation Authority Organization. Taiwan is the 22nd largest economy in the world, and as such, Taiwan must be part of the global solutions in the various international frameworks. I believe it has a lot to contribute through its experience and technology capability. If we are to focus on shared responsibility and promote peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies, we must give Taiwan and its 23 million people a chance. Despite the contributions of Taiwan towards the well-being of its citizens, of citizens of the globe, we continue to ignore the right of Taiwan to self-determination. Madam President, the time has come for this august body to give due recognition to Taiwan as a legitimate member of the family of nations. Madam President, it is important that administering powers, the non-self-government territories, and all relevant organizations honor their commitments made under the Charter of the 1960 Declaration on the Granting of Independence to colonial countries and peoples. To that end, and in accordance with the 1998 Noumea Accord, Solomon Islands welcomes the referendum to be held in New Caledonia on the 4th of November 2018 that is both free and fair. Solomon Islands reaffirms that human rights principles are universal, indivisible, interrelated, and must be treated in a fair manner. All states have the moral duty and responsibility to uphold, respect, promote human rights, and where necessary, take preventive, protective, and punitive measures against human rights abuses and violations. Solomon Islands recognizes and respects Indonesia's sovereignty over its territorial waters, boundaries. My government commits to work with the government of Indonesia on areas of mutual interest, including human rights concerns in Papua and West Papua. Madam President, Solomon Islands is committed to the principles of good governance and transparency. We have passed the Anti-Corruption Act, which aims to eliminate the scourge of corruption from all levels of our society. In addition, Parliament has passed our Whistleblowers Protection Act, giving due protection to those that bring issues of corruption to the attention of relevant authorities. Solomon Islands is also committed to the democratic principles and processes, and we are equally committed to the holding of free and fair elections in early 2019. Madam President, Solomon Islands is an ardent believer in collective action. We are staunch supporters of multilateralism. As such, we stand in solidarity with all members of this body, the pinnacle of multilateralism. Without the UN, as a small island country, we will not be able to be heard. Other louder voices will drown ours. Our expectations from this organization will remain high. As such, adequate resources for programs and projects that will impact citizens is needed. The UN has flaws, but Solomon Islands continues to feel the impact of the power of working together on global issues that are championed by the UN. We believe that the principles and values upon which the UN is founded remain relevant. Making United Nations relevant to all people is not just about standing up and talking about it in this august body. It is incumbent upon us all to be seen as making the United Nations relevant to all peoples in the actions we take individually and collectively. Madam President, I thank you.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of Solomon Islands for the statement just made. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. The Assembly will hear a statement by His Excellency Khurel Suk Ukna, Prime Minister of Mongolia. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming the Prime Minister of Mongolia. I invite him to address the General Assembly.